Turn it over to Ms. Kinzer for a roll call.
Ms. Parker, Ms. Martin, Mr. Pennings, here. Mr. Moore, here. Mr. Atkinson, Mr. Bates, Mr. Beaver, here. Ms. Powers, here. Ms. Morency, and Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Ms. Kinzer. Now I would like to ask everyone to stand for our Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for a brief moment of silence. All right. On our agenda, we also have a reminder of what our mission is. Our next item is to adopt the agenda. Do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Dudley, second by Mr. Pennings. Is there any discussion? Seeing no lights, we're ready to vote.
Please vote now.
Miss Shirley, you put me down as a yes.
You would be a yes too, Mr. Atkinson, like to vote yes as well. And we are trying to get Miss Martin connected. She is away for work, and so she's trying to Skype in. So you may see her face pop up here in a short time. I believe that motion did pass, so we'll move on to the next item, which is recognition and announcements. And I see Mr. Holmes is here. Looks like he's got some information to share with us, so I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Ms. Barker. Members of the school board, Dr. Marzak. I'd like to bring to you the attention of the Riverside Summer Literacy Achievement Academy that we had this summer. We've had the opportunity to receive funds from the state to provide a literacy camp for our students. So 30 of our students may participate in a summer project. And we have some representatives tonight. Our co-chairman, or co-chair ladies, I guess, Ms. Olivia Smith, and also Ms. Julia Mosier.
Well, thank you for having us here this evening. We just wanted to show you a few pictures of what's been going on at our camp this summer. And we brought one of our students here who at the end of it might want to share what she thinks about the camp so far. So if you'll bring your attention to our slides up here. Hey, so our theme this summer is kind of around the world, focusing on other cultures and showing students that through literacy they can, or literature, they can access places they may not ever get a chance to see or visit. So each Monday morning for camp, our students come in and they get on our 737 aircraft. And they each have their own passport, which we stamp with different countries. And then they get to, of course, write about what they want to see in that country. And here we have Captain Sharp that came in and passed out, I think, pilot wings and passports to the children and kind of talked them through what it would be like to be on a real aircraft and what he has to go through just to enter another country. So we've divided our camp. Last year we did it mostly by age and grades. This year it's by classes. So these are a list of the classes that our students get to rotate through every day. And every Thursday, our students go to the public library, which many of our students tell us that this isn't something that they even knew existed. They thought libraries were only in their school. And so whenever they go here, it's they don't want to leave. We stay there for a little over an hour, and it's the one place. And you would think with technology and everything that they've been exposed to, this generation has, that they wouldn't want that, but they love it. This is what they look forward to at the end of every week.
We had a kickoff party at the beginning of camp, and we got all students signed up for their own library card, and they will go home with them at the end of camp.
Okay, so week 1, we focused on South America, and we found an alpaca farm in Franklin that the students got to go to, and they learned many things about alpacas. And the mistletoe farms, they were great about sharing with the children other facts about alpacas and the habitat they come from, what we get from alpacas. And we have a couple of the books at the bottom, it's hard to see, that we've ordered that each of the students received at the end of the week. And just watching them make those world-to-text connections, just something I didn't really see my kindergartners this past year. They weren't able to make that, like what's an alpaca, what's South America, and what's a violin. And so they got to learn a lot of that first week.
I loved seeing the connections from each class and each field trip. We read a book in my class, which was PE that day, and it was called Soccer Star. Mm-hmm. But in the book, it talked about how in Brazil, they don't speak Spanish, the large population don't, and so we learned different words for different things. And it also connected to the cheese bread that they were making in cooking class. So the books that we were reading, they all connected with what we were doing.
Okay, week 2, we started with Europe, and we took our students to the Parthenon in Nashville, and they were amazed at the architecture of the building, the statues. And so when they got back to camp, we gave them clay, all kinds of crafting materials, and just watching their imaginations go from there. And then they wanted to write about it, and they wanted to go through the books and read more about it. And just how many times we heard, read this to me, explain this to me, was amazing. And that opened it up, of course, into your more well-known artists like, Da Vinci and Monet, and they wanted to learn about those things. And again, just watching them make those connections as we're reading to them, that was amazing. So we moved on from Europe to,
some more of the books that they got to
some more of the books that they got to play with. In cooking class, we read some others, but they made things out of, I think, for the refugees, stepping stones, and that's a wonderful book. And they made crepes. We started to study France, noticing the difference between that and I think pancakes was their connection there. So that was a really sweet moment as well. And then STEM projects also. How do we make our balloons? How do we get them to float? So endless connections there. And then we jumped into Asia. One of our teachers wanted to treat our students to a field trip to a local Japanese restaurant. And something a lot of our students said, well, I haven't been to a restaurant, much less one that had sushi and all these different foods. So we read this book, This Is How We Do It, and it's about other children in other schools, countries. What do I eat for breakfast? What do I eat for lunch? And all of our students learned how to use chopsticks. They were asking questions about the food. Why do people here eat this kind of food? And that opened a whole other line of learning experiences. And then when we got back, they wanted to read, of course, more books about it. And so that was a fun trip for them. So the third week was Africa and Australia. We ran about Mama Mati, and they read that book. They wanted to plant their own trees. So, sure, why not? So we gave them their own seeds, and they went from there. Then they wanted to research, well, how do I make sure it grows? How do you get this little seed to get into a giant tree? So they researched that as well. We brought in Molly
Molly
and
Perisic.
from, I think it was
Mount Pleasant
Mount
Middle
Pleasant.
School.
That's right, Mount Pleasant Middle School. She came in and taught the children West African dances. And then she came in again this week to teach them more dances from, I believe, India was the focus today. And here's just some more pictures of the students. They were making a Mancala game that they learned about in Africa. They are in cooking class as well as art class. And then, of course, dance and music class. They've enjoyed it quite a bit. And then for this week, we're focusing on North America, and a lot of our children didn't realize that some of the countries we've been studying, we traveled to Cuba today, and they didn't realize that those were a part of North America. They thought the United States was it. So we were happy to see them already asking questions about that. So these are some of the books that we will be studying this week. Tomorrow we'll go to the Nashville Zoo. A lot of our students said they just haven't had that opportunity either. Quatisha is one of them. She's excited to go for the first time tomorrow. We know our bookmobile is coming this Wednesday. The kids are looking very forward to that. And then, of course, Thursday is kind of our kickoff, last day of camp, where the kids will just keep writing about what they love the most, what they want to see next year if we were to do the camp again, maybe what they learned the most. But we've been able to focus with them on, instead of just giving them like a running record assessment, asking them how they feel about reading, and it's amazing already to see their answers of that from the first day of camp to now. And they're like, I am a reader, I am a writer. It's nice to not have to always take a test when I read, and I want to learn more. And more importantly, I can travel the world right from my book, right from my library. And these are just some things they wanted to share. They love their crafts, cooking class. And these are some of our sponsors that we've worked with. Hotsy Potsy Pottery came out and did ceramic with the children. And we did forget to put on there just the staff at Central Office that has been working with
I think
us.
everyone at Central Office has helped us, usually last minute at one point or another. So
That's been amazing, just to get field trips and anything together for these kids. So that's one we definitely want to thank as well. But yeah, that's it. Quatisha, do you have anything you want to say that they can't? No. Yeah, I don't blame you.
I promise you didn't have to talk.
That's good. Well, do you have any questions about anything going on?
I guess I have one question, because on here it says the Read to Be Ready camp.
Mm-hmm.
So are y'all using the Read to Be Ready materials from the state, or are y'all developing your own? Or
It's a different program. The
Okay.
summer reading program is different from what they use all year, and that was my big question, because I taught third grade this last year, and so when they were coming in for training for what they do year round, I was at first was like, well, I'm not really sure what I need because I've done the summer camp training, and they told me that it's different. The summer is just to really build that love of reading.
Okay.
We're just trying to get them to buy in and love it. So the rigor isn't as there quite as much. It's just all about the kids and building the love. So it's just, but we do provide a lot of options for books, a lot about choice that the state really pushes. So every week they get to choose 3 books to take home and keep forever. And they're hardback books, and they do have a choice. We call it the bookstore, and they get to choose them.
very cool. Thank you.
I would say it does connect with Read to Be Ready's vision. At least I see growth in our teachers with those read-alouds, and how can I get these kids to connect with this other than just pencil paper. And I think that's training a lot of our teachers for that Read to Be Ready framework that is coming. So they choose a certain unit, or they are given their unit, but they can really engage these children in many other ways. So I do like how open it is, similar to the camp.
And there was a lot of training on the essential questions, and so that was a big part of it too.
Ms. Powers?
I don't have a question, but I did want to just share that I have been going to an exercise class with a teacher that was with y'all, and to hear her enthusiasm as she described the kids, it sounds like it was fun for staff and students alike, and just a fun and energetic program. So thank y'all.
Nice, thank you.
Thank y'all. Next, we have Murray County Education Association.
School board members, Chair Parker, and Dr. Marzak, thank you for this opportunity, as always, to share with you. MCA President David Hubner is on vacation, so I am speaking this evening. However, there is a side story. Wendy Boshears from Howell Elementary was supposed to speak tonight. Her team members decided that she didn't need to come tonight. Her 2.5-year-old got sick Saturday. She had to take him to the emergency room, got him taken care of. Today, her 9-month-old was running a fever. She gave him the Tylenol. The fever came back. She took him to the doctor's office. And so, just needless to say, her older son was a team player and shared it with that brother. And so, because of that, I'm here on the second team, and here I am. I was supposed to come and sit and support her, but now I'm speaking instead. So I am Ann Davis from Spring Hill Elementary School. First, Maury County Education Association wants to thank the school board, particularly Vice Chair Betty Kinzer, for meeting with Mr. Hubner on issues relating to employee pay raise. Thanks for all the hard work that Ms. Kinzer and Mr. Lee Claiborne put into making this pay raise possible. We always believe that working together with the school board is better than working apart. Secondly, we want to thank our school board members who are not returning in August for their hard work, commitment, and public service for the past 4 years. Your work has been tireless, and we know you have given up many, many days and nights in meetings, phone calls, emails, and conversations to serve our Maury County Public Schools. Thanks again for your public service to our county. We hope you will continue to make your voices known and continue to work to improve our schools. As you depart after the August election, we look forward to working with your successors to improve Maury County schools, support our students and parents, and continue to engage teachers in what needs to be done to move our county forward. Again, thank you for your service to Maury County Schools.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Any questions or?
May I
Ms. Kinzer?
clarify something?
Sure.
We met with David Hubner because we felt he needed some correct information, that he needed to know the correct figures and just that sort of thing. It wasn't to, because this board has not voted on a budget yet, and we don't know where we are with it, but it was just for information, so that whatever information he was putting out to you was a little bit more. Yeah. Yeah, well, just so you know, board members, I didn't have a meeting just for whatever.
Thank you, MCA. Can we have someone to check the public delegation list, see if we had anybody signed up?
There are no names written on those who would like to speak on items tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Hewlett. You're doing double duty tonight.
Only if spoken to.
All right, next, staff reporting. I don't think we had anything. Correct me if I'm wrong. So we'll move on to consent items. Are there any items on the consent items that anybody would like to have pulled, or do we have a motion to approve those items? Thank you, Mr. Dudley. We have a motion by Mr. Dudley to approve the consent items, second by Mr. Pennings. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote.
Please vote now.
Hey, Joanna.
It's muted right now, 1 second.
Oh, okay. All right, that motion passed, so the consent items were approved. Ms. Martin, can you hear us? Oh, she's working on it. Hey, Joanna. We are. Well, we appreciate you joining us. We are on new business, so our next item is under instruction, advanced placement courses. Does anybody want to take any action on, or does anyone want to speak to it? Oh, Mr. Beaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On advanced placement courses, you know, I've looked at this and thought about it, and the cost of to enroll in the classes, do we have any cost? Does it cost to enroll in the classes? None. Okay, so, and it only costs to do the test, right? And we have a real low number in taking the test, correct?
Yes, sir, it could be higher, yes.
Okay, I guess, you know, my thoughts is if parents have some skin in the game, you know, then wouldn't it be more, well, I guess we got a very low number in passing the test.
Yes, sir.
Or
Getting a
making
3,
3
4, or
or
5.
below, yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, so if we got some skin in the game, if the parents have some skin in the game, wouldn't that be more, they would be more apt to push the kid to do better?
That, yeah, being a parent of AP students, definitely, because I know that's a cost that's coming out of my pocket. So I'm a little bit more on my kids to make sure you pay attention in the course, take advantage of before and after school tutoring opportunities, take advantage of Saturday opportunities for AP. So if the district could in some way either fund half of the AP test or a quarter of the AP test, and then the parents have to come up with either 50 or 75%, then that would precipitate the need, hopefully, for parents to be more invested. But then again, of course, you know, that comes down to money and budgeting. Yeah.
But, I mean, you know, we have some budgeting problems
Yes, sir.
also. And I mean, you know, so, you know, and I don't know what the percentage would be, but I would like to see that instead of the school system funding the entire cost of testing, that the parents have some skin in the game, where it be 50% or whatever, you know.
We don't fund it right now.
And right now, we don't fund any. Right now, the parents fund 100%.
Okay, okay. That's what my,
Okay. Yes, sir.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have, did we this year provide an incentive for students that took AP tests that they got 5 points on their final grade, or?
Dr. Woodard, do you know? We did? Yes. Okay.
Do you know when that was communicated to the students?
You said it's always been that way? Okay.
Well, yours is a little bit different than it does. Okay. But it requires you just taking the class. It requires you taking the test. I think next year, if that's gonna continue, I think that needs to be communicated on the front end, because I had a parent that told me that they did not know that, and that's pretty much the difference between a B and an A for their child.
I would think it's in the curriculum guide at registration, in the description of the course. I mean, if they looked at that, they would see. That's just standard for AP classes. I'm not sure, but I don't think advanced placement, and maybe Dr. Woodard or someone else can speak to this, I don't think that they would necessarily support us requiring students to take the test. The idea being the student becomes prepared, they choose to take the test. And yes, some of them more should take it, that's for sure. But I'm not sure that we could say everybody has to take the test.
Somebody else is on. Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see it.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Miss Morency.
How many of our AP students don't take the test because they can't afford the test? I mean, do we have some kind of contingency that we may help kids that want to take it that can't afford to take it?
I don't know if we have anything like that for kids that would like to take it but don't have the funding for it. But I'd have to get that information for you. But as Ms. Kinzer mentioned, that is correct. 5 points are awarded each quarter, except in the fourth quarter. If the kid does not take the AP test, then the 5 points are upheld in the fourth quarter if the kids do not take the AP test. And that was what the state is doing. The State Board of Education passed that rule so that more students would be incentivized to take the test. Many students will hop into the courses and try to brave the rigor of those courses for the extra bonus points, but they don't want to take that rigorous exam that comes with it at the end. And so we're working diligently to make sure kids do take the test and do score well.
Dr. Woodard, aren't there funds for free and reduced students? Aren't there some funds available?
In our next year's Title IV project, we did allocate some funds for free and reduced students to take advanced placement exams, including industry cert or anything like that if they couldn't afford it.
I guess these numbers that are on our sheet, are they included in the budget for this coming year, or have they been allocated from this year's funds
No, ma'am, these are not included in the budget as of yet.
as of yet?
Yeah. And one of the things I did want to add, I pulled up Central High School's curriculum guide. Under advanced placement on page 4, it says that 5 points are added to the grade. And I believe on page 6, honors, it says that 3 points are added to the grade. So this is on the curriculum guide for Central High School, just as an example.
Maybe when they do their syllabus on the, in the beginning of the school year, they may want to highlight that
Re-emphasize it.
fact.
Sure,
Yeah.
we can re-emphasize that.
I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know how big the curriculum guide is. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but, I don't know.
It's given to ninth graders. They do it at Spring Hill and everything when they have pre-registration. Teachers, all the parents are given and gone over it and all of that. So parents have access to it. You will.
Sounds good. Any action?
What do you need from us?
Well, this is a request to have these certain AP classes at the schools, to add some classes at certain schools. There's a listing there of the ones that are being added, ones when teachers are being trained, if they're being trained this year, if they're not being trained this year, all that information and the costs with textbooks and whatnot.
I move that we accept the recommendation. That's what it is, isn't it, a recommendation of courses for next year?
Mm-hmm.
As listed in the
As listed,
principal's
right.
letters. Okay. All right. We have a motion to approve the AP courses as listed in the principal's letters. We have a second. Any other discussion on that? I will just say, I'm not going to vote for this, not because I don't agree with AP classes, but I don't know that it's a good use of our money if certain teachers have not gone through the training yet. I don't think that's a class we should offer. I think we have to be smart with our funds, and we will essentially be adding $22,000 plus in costs for textbooks, and we know that we already have existing textbook issues, and I've yet to see a viable solution from central office for how we're going to address that for all of our students. So I hate to see us incur additional costs when we don't even have a plan for the existing basic curriculum. So that's one reason why I'll be voting no. Ms. Morency?
I think all of the instructors will have gone through the training, except for one, and that's the art teacher at Mount Pleasant High School. And I know that she had a wedding this summer, so she wasn't able to take it, but she will be taking it next summer. But I think everyone else had the training.
All right, see no other lights, ready to vote? Yours, it came through. All right, that motion did pass. We'll move on to parking consumable fees. I know that we had some information on that we talked about at the work session. Dr. Woodard indicated that the principals at all of the high schools and the unit schools have decided to all have the same fees. So it will all be consistent, which was different than what we had talked about at the board work session. So we just need a motion to approve the $20 and $10. 2020. All right. Motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Atkinson. Any discussion? We're ready to vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Is everything transparent about these fees? I mean, we're not saying parking fee and using part of the money for a party or something. I mean, is everything, all the listings for these fees actually where they're going?
I have two of my high school principals here that can speak to that. Mr. Dillard, want to ask Ms. Kathy to come up and Dr. Ryan Jackson to come up.
We will not use the fees for party. The parking fees will be used for the decals that we have to purchase every year. And for us, our parking lot needs striping again. The last time we did it, we used those funds to stripe it.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Full transparency. That $20 goes to any kind of maintenance that we would need on our parking lot, and of course the tags as well that she spoke to. We require all of our students to have identification in order to park, and they have a specific parking spot that they have. The lot is a little battered and bruised these days, so any and all funds that we can collect regarding fixing that is greatly appreciated.
Okay, well, that's what the board has been wanting for years, is that we have to be consistent across the system with our fees, and that there's no hidden stuff that if we say we're using it for a book, you know, we use it for the book. If we say we're using it for the end of school graduation, you know, that's what it's for. And so we just, you know, there's, in the past, schools collected money, and then there was no guideline as to where it would go. And so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have one question. Do y'all have a ballpark of what kind of fees are collected for the parking?
Oh, total number?
Just a ballpark.
No, sir.
How about the cost of striping the,
I could have that figure for you. I don't have it at my fingertips right now.
okay. Because I know, striping is very expensive. And so I just wondered, do you collect enough money to stripe it? That's my concern.
We're ready to vote. Ms. Martin, did you have any questions?
Yes, ma'am, that's what they said, that they would stripe the parking lot.
All right, we're ready to vote. All right, that motion did pass. We'll now move on to the parallel education contract. Ms. Kinzer?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to, I'm just not prepared to vote on this until we decide if it's included in our budget. That's just the way I feel.
All right, does anybody else want to take any action? Not, we'll move on. Okay, motion to approve by Mr. Moore. Second by Mr. Pennings. Is there any, Mr. Dudley?
Just like to ask staff, is there any particular reason why this would need to be voted on tonight? Or with delaying a vote till after we pass a budget?
Contract will expire August 31st, so there's still some time, but September 1 is when they go away, so we have to decide if we want to keep that contract or renew it.
Okay. Well, if we've got a little time, I agree with Ms. Kinzer. I'm not really wanting to vote on it till we see where our budget stands.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have a cost of, the exact cost of what it cost us last year for parallel?
For the year, that's the STEMI reason because that report is, there's an attachment.
Is a dollar value on that? Okay, I missed it.
Does that include all the schools? Because the one that I was looking at, I thought it only went through Hampshire. Is there?
No, it included all the schools. There's also, in case you're looking at that, for the central office, you may be wondering why there's substitutes. Those are the nurses. Those are included in the central office.
So do you have the cost for Whitthorne? I mean, I'm not seeing that on here.
Yeah. The whole attachment's not on there? Okay. I printed this from the report. We can get that to y'all. That's not a problem.
Okay. Thank you. Is that why Hampshire, I think Ms. Kathy's still here, y'all still have professional development, don't you? Because it looks like it stops at illness of employee, so I'm assuming you guys still had professional leave. Okay. Well, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Martin, do you have any questions? No, thank you. All right, we're ready to vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Powers.
Well, I'd just like to vote, I'd like to wait too, but.
We do have a motion on the table, but even if it's voted down, that doesn't mean that somebody could not add it on at another board meeting. So with that in mind, I'd ask everyone to cast their vote. All right, that motion did not pass. Move on to finance, Allaview contract. We did talk about this at the board meeting, but I think some of the same concerns were raised at that time. But do we have a motion with regards to the contract? Motion by Mr. Moore to approve. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Morency. Do we have any discussion?
I'm going to hold my vote until it's part of the budget process, if it's part of the budget.
All right. Any other discussion? Oh,
Real quick.
Dr. Marzak.
Karen, can you jump in real quick and talk a little bit about what Allaview's done so far and how they're helping us with the budget and where you see this moving forward? Talk just a little bit about that, just to inform the board members.
Yes, as the state is requiring that our whole budget be set up by location, they have assisted with that process. Prior to me coming, they published a chart of accounts with those location codes and assigned new codes. During our budget development process, they have assisted with the document that we gave to you. Essentially, we did all of the work through an Excel document, and then they turned it into more of a presentation. At the same time that we built the budget in the spreadsheet, it was also built in Skyward by the individuals who are responsible for those areas. And it allows the individuals who are responsible for those areas a more sort of user-friendly atmosphere for monitoring their budget, and the plans were to extend the access to Allaview to principals for their budget allocations in the coming year, and for Allaview to assist with the finance office and the process improvement that we are planning to do as we are just getting through the stages of Skyward Empower program that you purchased for them to analyze our software and our processes and how we're using everything. So when we get the results from that, Allaview is planning on assisting us with that part as well.
Mr. Pennings.
I think we have to keep in mind too, just because if we approve a budget on Thursday, that doesn't mean the county commission's going to approve the budget when it goes to them. So we could be looking into September before we have any definitive answers on our budget. So, I mean, we can't put everything off. I understand where you're coming from, but just keep that in mind. Just because we pass a budget doesn't mean we'll have a budget.
I do have one question. What we paid Allaview in the past, I thought it was more in line with like 15,000, and this looks like it's more than that.
Yeah, we had paid them, and I can get the exact figures for you, but it was a smaller amount, and it took you through March, I believe. And then we brought back to you a shorter contract to get us through June 30th, and now we were proposing a full year contract. So that's why it seems more, because before it was partial.
And then are we adding products or services that we didn't have before? Because if we were 15,000 and now we got to 24, but there's 48,000 is the total ask.
Right. I would say that the services that are, the initial services were help with the chart of accounts and the location coding. And now it's been extended through conversations during this past 6 months regarding how they can help us with the process improvements between the departments and how things are set up and all of that. So yes, I would say it's extra services. Also, we're going to be, if we extend access of the software to other employees, then we're gonna have to do training as well. And then with that is, it's not just that we have the software and we have training, but these people are amazingly available, like 24 hours a day for help. So that's kind of unusual, but they seem to be really customer focused in that way.
When you mention processes and working through processes, I guess the question I have is, why are we paying a consultant to do that? Because I would assume that central office management knows the areas that need that need streamlining or things like
Yeah.
that. I mean, I don't know what our central office budget is, but I don't really understand why we're wanting to pay somebody else to make those recommendations that I would hope our management can already make.
I would say that probably from the perspective of having a third party come in and see it from their experience in other school districts and their experience with Skyward. I have my experiences in Skyward. I have my experiences in one district. I can provide that, but for whatever reason, maybe a third party would be better received. That's the thought. Dr. Marzak can chime in.
Yeah. Allaview works in numerous districts around the country, and they have what we call best practice procedures. We can put something in place, but then if we need to change it or adjust it, then we got to go back and we got to undo. Whereas Allaview has best practice, like I said, across the country. So they other people have fleshed out what's worked and what isn't working, and they can come in and provide those recommendations, which provide no unlearning and relearning. It's training the way it's supposed to be from day one moving forward. Go ahead.
One thing I could offer, maybe if you're uncomfortable with that part, we might be able to have them break down their services, and you can sort of pick and choose what you wanted them for.
Let me just say, I was not a fan of Allaview when we purchased them initially. I have come to see that they offer some value to us, but I'm not sure that they're offering the value because that's just what they do, or because that's what we're requiring them to do, because we're not holding up our end of the bargain as far as putting processes in place to know what needs to be done at a district level. Best practices are great, but I mean, Dr. Marzak, I think we kind of expect that you know what those best practices are. That's what we're paying you for. So I don't want to pay $24,000 over what we already pay you to have somebody come in and say these are best practices. Is kind of how I look at it. And then also the whole ESA, that they're the only game in town. I find it really, really hard to believe that there's a federal mandate for this new to budget by location or whatnot, and there's only one player in the game.
Well, we're probably 90% of the way on that, so that's pretty much accomplished. And as we finish our FY19 budget, then we'll finish that out. But like I said, if you would be more comfortable, we could have them itemize and maybe just have the cost to continue access to the software with support, and then maybe not do the best practices assistance with that, and then the location thing is really kind of finished. So it might be just some tweaking with that, but that could cut the cost down. I'd be comfortable with that. I mean, if Dr. Marzak is, so.
Mr. Dudley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there any other software program that this is duplicating that we could cut?
This is really like a complementary software to Skyward, because every day it downloads the exact data that's in Skyward and gives users access to it in more of an extensive way than Skyward. It's really for the non-financial user to make sense of things. So it's just a tool to help us, because Skyward is still our main software that has everything in it. This just draws information from it and makes it more user-friendly to manage. So I don't think it's really duplicated. It's sort of a different version of it. If we totally lost Alaview, at some point, I mean, it would be nice if we could have them to finish our budget since they're highly involved right now. But, you know, if for whatever reason we didn't have them and it didn't continue, then we would just have to push hard to have people really understand how to use Skyward a lot more than they do now. And, you know, maybe we could have some extra training in that or have reports set up and that kind of thing. So there's probably other ways to accomplish it, but this has just been a pretty much a seamless way to do it.
So we could accomplish what needs to be accomplished just with Skyward.
If after we finish our budget, because we have entered the whole, one thing it would be is sort of, we did a whole bunch of work twice then because we entered the whole budget in Skyward already, or in Alaview, and it was sort of a check and balance. So we had the spreadsheet, and then we had Alaview, and then once it's approved, Alaview automatically uploads everything that we've already put into Skyward, and that's usually days and days and days of hand entry of all those line items. So that part is really valuable, time-wise and accuracy-wise.
Did you use Alaview in Oak Ridge?
No.
And you used Skyward?
We did.
So
we had to hand enter everything, but our budget was a lot smaller too. Well, there was only 6 or 8 schools.
Okay. Well,
and it wasn't all by location, which is the new, requirement.
I will simply, for the record, say that I have reason to believe that we have a request for this tool because of weaknesses internally. So I understand that, as usual, we are halfway down the stream. And if we shift gears, that makes it hard, but we shouldn't have been on this path. And this is necessitated by weaknesses internally. So that's my statement for the record.
Ms. Martin?
And I may be completely off in my rationale of this, but what bothers me is that we're having to have a tool for the tool. But I don't do payroll, I don't do the finances for Mary County Public Schools, so I would trust that Mr. Leon would telling us what she needs, but I definitely echo some of the sentiments of board members that are saying that we need to figure out how to use guidance if we're going to use it. So to me, we're continuing to say that we don't know how to use it, we don't have the training, we need more training for it, and if we don't know how to use it, it still needs an additional tool. Am I the only one that thinks that? I don't understand. So if we need it for the budget, I get it, and I'll go with what she suggests because she is the expert on this. This is her scope of practice. But it just bothers me that we're having to have a tool for the tool. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Loud and clear.
I think it just, in answer to your question, it is a tool for a tool, but it's, the budget development process is very detailed and intense, and if we can develop it in Alaview and maneuver the data and produce graphs and all that kind of thing, and then present, and then once it's approved, or even prior to that, as we have to go back and tweak things, we do that. It's just like the software is better than a spreadsheet because a spreadsheet leaves more room for error. And so
We definitely don't need error.
right. So Alaview, this year was kind of a double check because we did both the spreadsheet and that. But then the nice part about it all is once you've got that bottom line and everything is where it's supposed to be, then that, like I said, is uploaded to Skyward. So then it eliminates issue of, again, error in entering all of those account numbers at all of the locations and all of the dimensions that we have and are required to have now. So hopefully that helps a little explain it. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Atkinson?
I just want to say, if we do vote no on this, I do want you to bring it back with a basic, what you need to make this work. Because I understand you do need this to double check your numbers, to understand all that. So, but I don't think we need that big a package. So I just want to say that I'd like you to bring it back at a better cost.
Yeah, Stan, can you come up to the mic real quick a little bit? Because we've talked a little bit about Alleview and how it benefits you and your department. But I would say, just to inform the board members, it's kind of like the difference between Windows 10 and MS-DOS. So you can work through your computer right now with a command prompt and do everything you need to do through MS-DOS. You can send email, you can do a Microsoft Word document, you can do everything. But the Windows 10 front-facing software is a graphical user interface that makes it easier for you to interact with your computer. And that's the same way that I would explain Skyward and Alleview. You can do everything through Skyward, but it's like coding. And it takes a lot of steps and it takes a lot of time, and you've got to be very detailed and intimately focused with the software. Where with Alleview, it's like interacting with Windows 10. So you can click around, you can see graphs, you can manipulate information and put it all in the same place. So Windows 10 talks with MS-DOS and makes it do in the background, just like Alleview talks with Skyward and makes it do in the background. So it is a beneficial front-facing tool to take care of the detail tool that Ms. Gagliano knows how to do, that not everybody knows how to do, because she is a well-trained chief financial officer. I think that's the best way to explain it. Stan, can you talk a little bit about how it helps you during the day?
What it helps me do, and I've said, I guess I've been the biggest cheerleader for Alleview on our staff when they're there, is it's the best tool that I've ever found for data mining and getting the data. I don't know how much experience you, and some of you've done a lot of data mining. Maybe that's something I have a background in. I actually got into data mining about 20 years ago when I was working in an insurance company when we were still working with MS-DOS, and we were downloading flat files and manipulating those and things that are way over my head. But if I can get you, Dave, to switch this over to where I could show my computer here real quickly, if you'll just put it on where I can connect wirelessly, can we do that? Yeah, can I do that? And I will show you a little bit of what I'm talking about if I could. And again, this is my application. Other people may do something different. 7086, is that what that says? Because I have been working, I've spent a lot of time with this. We're trying to get end of year done so we can see. So what I did was, if you can see, is I downloaded a file from Alleview. These numbers were pulled from Alleview. That is, I don't know how many lines of data this is. 4,243 lines of data that I was able to, in a spreadsheet, quickly build a pivot table to pick out my approximately 90 object codes that we're responsible for, which are account numbers. This one is technology, that's the different areas. Then I've got operations, then maintenance, and transportation. And out of that, be able to tell right now how much we budgeted, how much is encumbered by POs, what we spent for the year, and what's available in each one of those accounts. I was able to calculate how much we're going to project to spend for the rest of the month, tell me how much is remaining, put in any budget amendments we have pending, and show how much money is still available in that account, to then work with the other people in the office to let them know if we're going to have any excess so we can do any additional funds. I couldn't do this if I didn't have Alleview. And I spent last week, a good bit of last week, being able to pull this in. And Greg, I went through it several times so I could tell Ron Woodard $364,050 I think is available in excess funds from those accounts to do by budget amendment that you're going to approve tonight to help some things balance out. That's what I use Alleview for. It's a data mining tool for me, real easily to dump it into a spreadsheet. And they taught me how to do all this in about a 2-hour session. So it's not real complicated.
So does everybody know how to do what you're doing? I mean, Dr. Woodard, he said he told you he has $300,000. So can you go through and tell us you've got 300,000?
Well, he's been using AlloView to look up at his accounts to see where he needs
Right.
that money. So he then has identified where he needs to plug that money in
Okay.
to make things break even. That's how he is. But, because you've been using AlloView to do your budget amendments, right? Same sort of thing. And I had another thought with that. It left
Let me
me.
jump in here.
But anyway, yeah, just say that the thing about them being available, like Friday afternoon, I was sitting in my office, I had one question on it. I just got on an online chat, somebody popped on immediately, we got it worked out, they emailed me some stuff, and it was solved pretty quick.
What I appreciate about AlloView is the user friendliness of the application and the tech support. If you have a problem, you can send a quick email in and they'll get right back to you and help you out. I'll be honest with you, the financial part of this is not an area of expertise for me. It's an area where I'm growing and learning, and God knows I make some mistakes, but I tell you what, it is easy to see everything in AlloView. It's crystal clear. You can see where the funds are, and it really helps with the purchasing side of this, and that's been probably the biggest asset for me, is seeing how purchases are moving through the district. So it is a great tool, and it's a tool that I hope that we will continue to have for the district. I think that over time, it will help us to alleviate some of the mistakes that have been made over the past. So I think it's a great tool.
I just want to say that when we switched from local government to Skyward, I think we were told at that time that it was like moving from DOS to Microsoft 10. So now to hear that we moved to a DOS system, I don't know if that analogy is getting repeated, if that's just like a tired analogy that we use, or if that's really the truth. And that's what's really hard for me to determine here.
And I wouldn't certainly call Skyward a DOS system. I would call Skyward a very verbose accounting system that works on a Windows-based platform. That's what I would call it. Now, what I would tell you is it did not come with a lot of reporting capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can get those, and you may be able to do some of this, but we would probably spend as much in training, because their training doesn't happen for $1,000. It's usually a $5,000 to $10,000 lick for somebody to come in and train. So it's possible we could go through the training and learn how to do this through Skyward. We haven't been exposed. I've been to 0 Skyward training so far. They've offered, and anytime I've asked, well, we can come and do that, but that's 3 days and an extra $15,000 or whatever. So again, I think you can do that with Skyward. But again, you're talking about managing a $100 million budget. You don't do that with what's the software everybody uses? QuickBooks.
QuickBooks.
You can't use QuickBooks to manage a $100 million budget. You've got to have something very verbose, very complicated to do the payroll. The different, but it's a very complicated system. I've put in accounting systems, but I've never managed. I've managed $2-3 million budgets with accounting. I installed software to do that. But I think what it is, because of the fact that it's very, I couldn't get this out of the old system either. So that's, again, all I see AlloView is just, it's a data mining tool. That's really all it is, and it gives us the ability to do this. Now, I'm like Ron, I'm not a finance person either, but I feel like for these areas that I'm accountable to manage, I need to be looking at the finances, and I do this every month. I pull this report. Tommy can tell you we have a staff meeting every month. I give this out to, Eric can tell you, everybody on our staff, and we go through this every month. I pull this information. Nobody else, I don't get anything from the finance department. I don't get anything from anybody. This is where I get my information to manage our budgets with. And I just couldn't, I might could do it with Skyward. I just don't. I've tried. They built reports for me in Skyward, but I can't get this from Skyward.
Again, I'm not necessarily saying that you could get it from Skyward versus you can't, but I'm saying when we purchased the system, we were told one thing and we're getting something else. So either it's a system that can produce those type of reports that you need to be able to manage a $100 million budget, or it's not. And if it's not, then we should have known that on the front end and not have to have a tool for the tool, as Ms. Martin said. That's where my frustration comes in, because at the end of the day, you all know we're trying to make this budget work. And when you start adding in $48,000 and you've got kids that don't have books and teachers that may not be getting paid, that's a pretty big deal. So it's not that I don't want y'all to have the tool. It's just, where does that fall on my priority list in the big picture for fiscal year 19 is all I'm saying. I want y'all to have it, but I'm like Ms. Kinzer. I don't know where the numbers fall at this point. I just don't. Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I agree. When we bought Skyward, we were sort of told that this is the only accounting program we'll need. And then before you turn around, we got to have something to work with Skyward. I just don't want to come up this next year and come up with an additional program. I mean, if these two, Skyward and Out of View, are all the programs we're going to need, I can live with that. But I don't want to come up next year and say, somebody say, well, you know, these are limited and we need to get Joe Blow's program and spend another $48,000 or whatever on it. I just don't want to keep buying programs. At some point, our staff has to be able to do it with what we have. And then we can't keep changing stuff. I want us to stay with a system where we can have the training and not have to swap and buy additional programs.
Seeing no lights, unless I missed anybody. Ms. Martin, did you have anything?
No, I just appreciate her explanation. And I'm going to trust that she knows exactly what she needs, but we need to eventually get it down with Skyward, excuse me. So I appreciate her explanation.
All right, thank you. With that, I think we are ready to vote. That motion did pass, I do believe, 6-5. We'll move on to a resolution. Correct fund balance, or correct balances. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bates, I didn't see it.
Thank you. Thank you. I wasn't exactly sure. So is this something that I guess was discussed at the work session? So I may be at a little bit of a disadvantage.
I can't
which is
remember
my
if we
fault.
had any discussion or not on it, but I can quickly sort of sum it up for you.
Okay.
This is something that the auditors brought to my attention, and what happens is annually when the budget is approved, I'm familiar with it from the city perspective versus the county, but it's the same format. And because the school's budget is sort of rolled into the county budget, there's a format that shows all of the revenues, all of the expenditures, and then it shows the fund balance at the bottom, and if you use any of the fund balance, and then what the new fund balance is for starting the new year and what the new budget is. Well, apparently that form was not completed by someone at the schools. Typically, I would complete it and give it to the city. And it was taking the budget that the board approved and just putting it in a different format for the other governing body. And so apparently that step was missed. So we had until June 30th to correct it. And it just is stating what the fund balance was at the end of the year before and what it was for, what it was on June 30th and what it was on July 1. So that's what this resolution corrects.
And I guess since we're kind of going back in time, a little bit of a disadvantage and not be able to go back and look at what our material I said before. So, and I was a little bit confused in your memorandum. It indicates that some things should have been included in the 17-18 budget, but looking at the resolution, it looks like it's adding things for the 16-17 budget. So, maybe it's supposed to read that way, but it's almost like, and I just may have been confused.
It was hard to explain.
Yeah. But I'm seeing, like, in the memo, it looks like there needed to be some changes in the 17-18, but the resolution seems to be doing some things in 16-17.
What it does is it takes the ending figures from 2016-17 and starts out the 17-18. So it takes figures from the end of one year and uses them to start the next year. And I probably didn't explain that very good. But that's essentially what it's doing.
Right. And again, I'm at a disadvantage because I didn't have a chance to go back and look at all the material, but I was trying to go back and look at our audit that was released in March.
Right, the figures came from the audit.
And that's where,
The
and again,
previous
I look
year
at
audit.
these, and I look at these things and they say one thing and then maybe another line that says something else. But looking at page 163, I was just, looking at, from the website, page 163 of the audit. It says that the ending fund balance for July 1, 2016 was $12.4 million. But then this resolution indicates that it's 10.4. And so I was a little bit, and again, it could be that I'm getting cross-eyed when I'm trying to look at these budgets and things like that. So maybe I'm
They
confused
do
about that.
list it in different ways in different parts of the audit. Sometimes it's the full amount, sometimes it's designated versus undesignated. And basically, I had to ask the auditors, for their assistance in actually getting the correct numbers in here, because it is something I wasn't here and it was kind of confusing. And you're right, it is listed in different places in the audit. So these are the numbers that they
And that's what is
directed us to use.
And maybe you can help one day when you have more time to be able to just help us to understand
page?
what is our fund balance. So that gets a little bit frustrating because, again, I'm looking at straight from the comptroller's office, the audit that they released in March on page 163 says fund balance July 1, 2016, 12.4 million. Fund balance June 30th, 2017, 8.3 million. So, but then this resolution is, you're saying that the auditor is saying that the fund balance on June 30th, 2017 is not what they show on page 163, it's 6.5 million. So, and
Right.
again,
and
it
I
may
wanna
be
say it
it's.
was page 130 from my memory that they directed me to.
Okay. And I see some places in there where it talks about actual,
Right.
and then there will be other accounting methods, and then there will be budgeted amounts, and so that's where I get a little bit confused on that.
It's very confusing because there's certain like GASB, a format that GASB requires, and then another format
Right.
for, like you had just referred to. So yeah, it is.
And
very
I'm so simple. What I like to do is just kind of figure out what's in the bank. We can talk about these different numbers and stuff. When they say, and that's what I would like to be able to get some information on, and maybe you can give some explanation, and you may want to write down page 163 of the audit, and then maybe you can just get back to me and explain, why does it say this one number here, and then you're saying that the auditors are saying a different number when their own report says this number? And
Sure.
why, what is that? Help me to understand in a very lay person perspective what that means.
Sure.
So I'd appreciate that.
Definitely. Will do.
Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, it seemed like for the last 3 years or more, we keep having to make adjustments to these figures. And I'll be honest, it makes me feel insecure about trusting, are these figures correct or not? If we can't come up with a figure that each of us 11 board members can trust, I think we need to do something different with our accounting. And of course, I think the county is dreaming with their plan to run everything. It is probably going to get worse. But anyway, as a board member for the school system, I would like to be able to put trust in our figures. And then I don't really like having to make adjustments every time we turn around.
Right. I've only been here for 8 months, and we've already had this, and we've had the other adjustments that were required by the audit, which sort of tampered with my projections for fund balance, because at the time that I set up the model, I wasn't aware that these adjustments were going to happen. So, yeah, it's very concerning, and I'm hoping that we're at the end of it, for sure.
But this is something that the auditors have requested that we do by June 30th, I would imagine.
Yes, ma'am.
So do we have a motion to approve the resolution? Motion by Mr. Pennings. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Moore. Any further discussion on this resolution? Joanna, Ms. Martin, did you have any questions on this? All right. Seeing no lights, I think we are ready to vote. All right, that motion did pass. Move on to the monthly financials. Do you want to speak to that, Ms. Gagliano?
I've included a memo that sort of summarizes May. This is through May. And let's see here. Well, somehow it's missing. Oh, here we go. Okay. Each month I've been sort of letting you know where we are in the year. Through May, we were at 91.6% of the budget. Our actual revenues were at 90.89, which is pretty close to that. And our expenditures were at 83.66, which is a little bit lower, which is good. We actually received a little bit more in revenue. We spent more than we have in previous years. When the model was put together, we kind of look at the previous year's spending. So what I'm guessing is that perhaps the cutoff for spending was implemented a little bit earlier this year, so everybody rushed during May to get their expenditures in. So it kind of increased. May is also a time when sometimes contracts are re-upped for the next year, so that there's a smooth transition. So those could be some of the things that affected it. So the spending was within the people's budgets. It just was higher than your history showed for those months. I talked a little bit more about the teacher salary and how it's included in this report, August through May, but that the payments go through July and will be accounted for in June. And at the very bottom, I mentioned some things about cash flow and the fund balance report. I wanted you to take a look at those reports that I've attached with some adjustments that we've had during the year. The fund balance is less than what I would like it to be. We're still above the 3% forecasting for the end of the year, but barely. So the adjustments are in green, and you can see like the impact that it had. I also changed, one of them is to account for this fund balance, beginning balance that you just approved. So that also impacted it. With that, we're still within the 3%. I'm hoping that during the month of June, our BEP will catch us up some on the revenue side so that we have it for cash flow. And I definitely recommend no use of fund balance going forward at this point. Any questions?
So you're estimating that our fund balance at the end of the month will be $62,000?
I am estimating that at the end of the fiscal year, you will have $63,000 above the 3% that's required. The 3%'s 2.8, almost 2.9 million. So you'll have just barely above that 3%. So that's That's uncomfortable to me, so I want to make sure we keep an eye on that.
And we just approved that we ended with 6 million something last year, or whatever the figure is. I'm not sure. This
Right,
is
and-
awful. That's terrible.
Well, if you look at the listing that I've included, it shows where everything went this year. It labels it if it was fund balance, and how it affected that number. So that's how you got there, and now
Are we
we are
gonna,
where we are.
are we gonna begin budgeting that July payroll, or is it always, I mean,
Right now, we're kind of stuck with it that way because we would really need the revenue in July, and that's going to be when our lowest amount of revenue is that month. So if we did that, if the county was willing to give us a loan, we could probably straighten it out. I thought about it, and we just have so many changes this year and so many things we're trying to get right that I'm hoping that we can build a relationship with them and do it for next year to get that straightened out. It's not ideal, but we just had so many other things we had to fix that it kind of took a back seat. And because of the money, really. So maybe what would be great is if during this year that's coming up that the revenues come in higher than we think, and at the end of the year they'll go straight to fund balance, and that'll give us some cushion that we can plan to use to do this. And maybe we would only have to ask the county for half of it. It's probably about 4.5 million that we would need to do that. So we can be planning for that for next year. And Dr. Marzak and I talked about that as well.
Not only that, in October, when the BEP comes in, that 4.5 million gets replaced. But then again, we need it again next July. So that's something that Ms. Gagliano, but we've talked about a plan for this year. One of the things that I do like that you guys are talking about doing is putting everything into the general purpose, not relying on fund balance, trying to get the county commission to allow us to budget revenue appropriately. Let's take a year and kind of pump the brakes on fund balance and see where we end up June 30th, 2019. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Do we have any idea what our fund balance will be come 1 July?
That would be the numbers that I was just referring to. My estimate shows that we will be about 63,000 above the 3%.
So that is after 1 July.
July 1, right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Thank you, ma'am.
Yep.
I just want to make one statement, because when I came onto this board, I remember how we talked about fund balance. It is almost, fund balance is almost like this sacred cow, that we wanted to have a healthy fund balance. And to think that we are to the point that we have almost 63,000, that's unconscionable. I mean, I don't know how we got here. I mean, I know we've approved things, I know we've spent things, but and I do know how we got here, unfortunately, but I just think that this is really eye-opening, and if we as board members don't want to get out in front of this and plan better, we're going to be, the next board that will be sitting here next year may be looking at a negative fund balance and going to the county and asking them for money. So this is really quite eye-opening. But thank you for sharing it with us.
Part of the problem, like I said, was those adjustments that came mid-year after the audit. I mean, it had to do with revenues that were counted in this year that were supposed to be last year, so those had to be moved back. So, you know, those kinds of things, all you need is a couple of those, and your projections are pretty far off. So hopefully we don't have any more things from the past creeping in and affecting our projections.
But you know, when you think about how much money we've spent on finance and where we are, how does this happen? And I'm not placing the blame on you or on VACO, but there are some common denominators here, and I really think we need to be very conscious of those common denominators. Mr. Bates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Ms. Gagliano, let me see if I understand this correct. So on July 1, you're saying that you estimate our fund balance will be around 63,000 plus the 3%, which is about 2.9 million.
Correct.
Okay, so the fund balance will actually be close to 3 million. Okay. Now, of course, one thing, yes, I'm concerned about us depleting our fund balance, but one thing that historically we had that replenished fund balance on an annual basis, you all will recall when the county would not budget us certain revenue, but it was still designated to us, that money would roll into fund balance each year. So when we passed this current budget, the 17-18 budget, and we agreed for the county to take over $2 million in pennies away from us, that's a huge difference. If those pennies were still allocated to us, that over $2 million would go back into fund balance and would replenish our fund balance. That's what would help us to continue to replenish our fund balance and keep us to have a healthy fund balance. Amongst other things, we also got to watch the expenditures. We also got to watch our P's and Q's. But that's something that we just need to recognize whenever we agree to. We have to think long term. Each fiscal year that the county approves a budget, they're going to set a budgeted amount. But there's a revenue amount that's up here. And we have to be very careful of allowing them to mess with that revenue amount, because that's the real money. And again, I get confused all the time because I don't know half of, when they say it's this, as far as from an accounting standpoint. But the real amount, and this is something that we've had difficulties with the county commission, we've tried to get them to understand that the real amount is actually more than what the budgeted amount is. But they don't want to, they haven't historically wanted to do that. But that money still comes to us. So when that money was designated to us, even though they wouldn't budget the revenue, after the year, it would roll into our account. That's gone. And that's very concerning to me as well, that's not just going to be this year that we're seeing it happen, that money's not there, but that's going to be as long until the county reallocates that funding to us. So this will be the exact same situation next year, the year after that, the year after that, the year after that. In 5 years, that's well over $10 million. That could be going to maintenance, could be going to computers, could be going to those sorts of things. So we do really have to be very cognizant of that, and I hope future boards will be very cognizant of that.
And also, Ms. Gagliano, please correct me and inform the board if I'm wrong. This doesn't take into account any unspent money as of June 30th that's going to roll into fund balance. This is just pure where we'll end up without counting on that money, correct?
Right, that's
Gotcha.
correct, and it also does not include anything like you were just talking about, when we were tracking our revenues, we're over what we budgeted, and it was either property or sales, and that will roll to fund balance. So we have a little bit going in, not as much as we like, but yes, so hopefully we'll end up with some from both the expenditure and revenue side.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, we'll move on to budget amendments. And these are the ones that we didn't have a chance to look at before the work session. And can you guys kind of indicate for us, the budget, the agenda goes live for us usually Monday or Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Were there ones, and then I know I've gotten emails from some people that have had changes, but I just want to make sure that board members know what's been changed so that we can have some clarification on that, because it's, what I saw on Tuesday is not what's on here today, and I'm sure that other board members had similar issues as well, because it looks like there were some budget amendments that I didn't get any emails about that were added on here after that Tuesday date. Do you know?
Right. Well, they are in numerical order. So I know that some of them were added today, and then some of them that were originally in there had to be, that were originally in this list had to be altered a little bit and changed. So but some of the people that worked on them today, I think maybe Ron could explain what he added. There was some Title I where they had just gotten some information, those kinds of things. Yeah.
Gaines, he had emailed that out. He emailed me and I asked him to send that out to the whole board, but I think there are other ones on there that are
And there was a last minute
different.
special ed thing from the state.
And Ms. Ventura emailed us all about that as well.
Yeah.
But
So probably Dr. Woodard's, and I'm trying to think if there was anyone else that, I think that was just today, those.
are there any questions from board members? Do you want to take these as a whole, or do you want to go through them individually? Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, we just got through spending a lot of time talking about Skyward and Out of View, and then we look at these budget amendments, and we have numerous ones that are saying transfer funds to cover overages. With these great accounting programs, how come we're having overages?
Basically garbage in, garbage out. So if it wasn't set up correctly from the budgeting standpoint, then when the actual expenditures are charged there, it will be under budgeted. So, it came back to how the budget was set up versus how it was actually spent. That's probably the most straightforward answer I can give you.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that we will not have anywhere near the number of budget amendments you guys have had since I got here. This is very unusual. Budget transfers are not that unusual, but even those you can keep to a minimum. So this is definitely not the goal.
Okay, some of these overages dealt with payroll. Are any of these making corrections where employees were overpaid?
If an employee was overpaid and it was charged to a line item, then it would show up in here as being, if it wasn't budgeted for, it would be over budget. But I believe as those individuals are being identified, Human Resources is contacting them and collecting the funds. And a credit can be applied to that expenditure that really shouldn't have happened.
Okay, do we have an accounting of what the overpayments were and then how much has been repaid?
Yeah, I think Dr. Alexander has that for you. She said she could get it.
Okay, can you give me an idea of what percentage has been?
Okay, she's got to do a little bit more research on the up-to-date number for that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Williver, do you know anything on that as far as the overpayments and what the collections are? Because at the audit meeting for the county commission, Dr. Marzak said you were working on that. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question on 7143, the overage? Looking down there, attendance clerk, $281,934. Is that, what is that?
Let me get there.
Okay.
See who it is, who's responsible for that.
Scott Gaines.
Okay. We'll let him come up. There's a copy.
When we were doing this process, we ran our revenue and expenditure reports, and then once we saw the overages, we had to dig into seeing what the issue was. I think originally when the budget was set up, we had folks that were charged to that account that we didn't have the funds for. There are a number of, normally that would normally be clerks that would include attendance clerks and guidance clerks. There were a number of, I think only the attendance clerks were budgeted. So we didn't have enough funds there to cover that line. So that's why we had to move funds there. They were budgeted in 116 where we went, well, they were budgeted in 163, I believe is where they were budgeted at.
Okay, so you just had to move them.
Right.
Okay, so just to clarify that a little bit, they were budgeted somewhere else in the wrong account number, so they had to be moved to the correct account number. Because they were actually charged where they were supposed to be, but there was no budget there. Or they were charged in the wrong place, they had to be moved.
Ms. Powers?
But just to clarify, that was, I mean, when did that get, like, garbage in, garbage out? When did that garbage go in?
Well, everything is tied to when the people are put in the system, which account number they're supposed to be charged to, because that's what will happen throughout the year.
Who was
Now, whether
responsible
budget
for making that number accurate? Whose responsibility? I mean, I just need to understand how the system is supposed to work.
Okay, so setup would be in HR, and then the budget was put together through a combination of finance and the individual department heads.
But at the time, the finance piece was VACO, but the HR was Amanda Alexander. Okay,
That department, yeah.
okay, thank you.
Well, since December, prior to December, we didn't set up. Well, you set up employees. Right on the employee management side, but the pay records were set up on the pay side. December 1 is when we took it all over.
These salary overages, are they in all of our departments, like at every school, for title, for special ed, for CTE, general instruction, or are we seeing it concentrated in one area?
With some of the budget amendments that we have submitted to you, we wanted to ensure that we had enough funding in there because there are going to be some overages otherwise. We saw this in Social Security, healthcare. Help me out, Scott, some of the other areas. In the office of the principal line, with the assistant principals, counselors, just across the board, we had some shortages. I'll be just frank with you, there were some shortages. And so we had to project out for 3 more pay periods to make sure that those accounts don't come up negative at the end of the year. And so we're moving money to make sure those accounts are protected so everything is in the black in all the 100s and 200 level accounts before the end of the year. So that's kind of what these budget amendments were.
Did y'all just figure out that there were these shortages, I guess, like in the last month? Or, I know for you, Dr. Woodard, you were monitoring, I know you were monitoring your budget when you came to us in February and talked about like going, to Boston. You told us you had $62,000 for travel so I know that you were monitoring your budget. So my question is, if you already saw that these things were not, equaling out, why were we not getting some, I don't ever remember us having this many budget amendments at the end of the year. So is there a reason for that? Are we monitoring it on a monthly basis, like Stan mentioned? For all of you, whatnot, you mentioned, I just don't understand why we're getting to this point where we don't know if we're going to be able to make payments for the next 3 pay periods.
It's a concern for us as well. And again, that's why we're moving money around to make sure that we're not in that predicament. And I'll tell you what, I'll be honest with you, we still have some things to talk about with regard to the 116 line. With regard to the $1 million shortfall that we had last year. We have some gaps. When we take a budget and run the same number that we ran the previous year, and then we have a 3% increase and a step increase, somewhere we're going to fall short. And so that is what's happening. We're taking the existing funds that we have and we're moving those things around so we don't fall short. And this is the time of year where we have some cleanup. And let's just be honest, it's been a messy financial year for the district. It just is what it is. And this is the time that we're cleaning it up. And that's what's happening right now. We're trying to clean it up. And sometimes when you clean it up, you get messy. And that's just where we are. We're trying to clean it up and make it right. I don't have any excuses to give you, anything to offer other than the fact that we're trying to make a situation that was already bad and fix it and make it better. And it's just kind of where we are, and we're doing what we have to do in order to get to that point.
Well, and I appreciate the fact that you are trying to do the cleanup, and obviously it looks like you guys are trying to be very thorough about it, so I do appreciate that, and I'll be curious to see what the audit findings say. Not that that matters to some people, but it does matter to me how many audit findings we have, so I will definitely be paying attention to that when we roll back around next March.
And one of the things that we've talked to the auditors about is making sure it's cleaned up by June 30th. So that's the
Right.
reason for the detail in this, and that's something we've cleared with Mark and Kinsley. You know, how many budget amendments is too many budget amendments? And they keep telling us, as long as it's cleaned by June 30th, to us, that's what's most important.
And
So that's
I
the
don't
reason for the
disagree with
detail.
that. My problem is that we, as board members, to try to, I mean, budget amendments are something that, you know, it's really hard for us, I think, to know which line items all these things are coming out of. What I'm saying is that if you knew there were some of these issues, I don't know why you weren't bringing them to us months ago.
Well,
That's
and-
my problem.
And some of the reasons why is because you have to wait till we get to a certain point to determine where your funding is. Like, for example, that's something Mr. Breed and I talked about. It was hard for him to do his budget amendments until the May billing was done. So that leaves him only 3 weeks from the second week in June till June 30th to determine what additional money he has left over and where it could possibly go. So some of this stuff is constrained by time. Would have loved to have done it back in January and February, and we did some. But now we're coming to the end of the year cleanup where we know where we currently are, where we're gonna be, where we're not gonna be, and what available money is available in the budget now for us not to have to tap anything else to move money around to make sure it all equalizes out. That's the idea.
You were intricately involved with this last week, right?
No, ma'am, I wasn't. I was on vacation last week.
Okay.
One thing that we can do going forward to eliminate a lot of this is during our budget development process, we want to make sure that every line item has a list of people in it and they belong there and what they're being paid, and that total matches up to what we have in the budget. And that will eliminate a lot of moving around at the end of the year to cover things, whether it's a salary or a benefit, you know, anything that has to do with personnel.
And that's what we're building in Allaview right now.
Do you feel confident in that, Ms. Gagliano?
That is what we are working towards, and I have requested that we have some lists of things so that we can double check everything, and I would like to have a list with a total bottom line for each salary and benefit we have so that we can provide backup of what's in that account number and that everyone in there belongs in there, or if they don't, we put them where they belong.
Okay, so you've asked for that and you're getting it?
We're getting the benefit lists as we speak, and the salaries are yet coming.
All right, Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So these checks to make sure the budget is accurate have not been made yet.
The way the budget was developed is each department head was responsible for putting their list of people in their proper account numbers. I would like to do a dual check system where we actually do printouts. For example, for the benefits, I would like a printout of by account number of what we have, like each person that's in that account number, and for example, what health insurance plan the board is paying for them, so that I know exactly how much we need in health insurance and what it's costing now, use the projection of our increase, and then maybe put a 1% in there for people that may change to a family plan or something like that. So that's my goal, to be more accurate, and the same thing with the salaries.
So we're scheduled to have a budget meeting Wednesday, I believe. Is that correct? So there again, we're not going to be able to depend on the accuracy of the budget presentations because nothing has been checked.
It's been checked without the reports, but I would like to see the reports, yes.
Okay. Well, as I stated earlier, this board depends on the figures that staff presents to us. And without us being able to depend on the accuracy of those figures, you know, it sounds like we're going to go into another budget year not knowing what our true figures are. And you know, I've been on this board for just shy of 12 years, 11 years and 9 or 10 months. I've never seen this number of budget amendments at the end of the year. I mean, we've always had a few, but the ones that really concern me are the ones where overages. And you know, I feel like those should have been brought to us earlier in the year. And you know, it just concerns me. Clean up account balances. I mean, that's a broad statement right there. How many account balances did we have to clean up?
You can see by the number of budget amendments. Quite a
You
few.
know, it just really does concern me to have this number of budget amendments and the types of budget amendments. I mean, I know we've always transferred funds that to buy you know, additional computer or you know, various classrooms items and all, but you know, some of these to me are real serious.
I think one thing, and Ms. Cagliano, maybe you can help us with this a little bit. I think we have to maybe understand a little bit about a overage or shortage. You're not saying with all these or these amendments that we're going to be taking money out of fund balance in order to have enough money to spend within these budgets. If my understanding is correct, basically you're saying, I've got money in this budget, I've got money in this budget, I may need to move money from one budget into the other.
That's correct, yes.
So it's almost
Nothing's
like
coming out of fund balance.
Right. So we're not
There is no fund
short where we're having to go and take our savings. It's kind of like in the beginning of the year, we budgeted so much for milk, so much for eggs. We still got enough money for milk and eggs. We just put a little bit too much in the milk, and we need to buy some more eggs, so we're just moving from the milk budget into the eggs so that we're
Correct, but we can get more
I mean,
accurate.
I hate using, and I understand that sometimes, well, maybe the price of eggs went up a little bit, and you kind of under budgeted for the eggs that year, so you need to take a little bit out of the milk fund to be able to cover things in the eggs. I understand that's going to happen every year. I don't care. Nobody's going to build a perfect budget unless cost of everything just stays the same. But I will tell you that I'm disappointed, and I think other board members are disappointed by the number of these amendments. And I guess where my disappointment comes from is that I've kind of heard this song before. And maybe I misunderstood, but my impression from VACO to this board was that they were doing what you're talking about. We're going to build the budget from the ground level up so that you've got a good, reliable budget. We won't have to do all these, balance transfers, things like that. We're going to build everything up to be, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be more correct. And so I am disappointed because that was my impression from VACO, that we were going to have a good budget to be working with. So I kind of feel like I get a little bit of a runaround from the accountants, but Ms. Gagliano, I'm very hopeful that you're different, that this is a different song. It may seem like the same song, but this is actually a new one, and so we got a real good singer on this one, and it's really going to play all the way to the end, and next year, we're not going to have these problems. So I'm very hopeful going forward.
If I can do it my way, I can guarantee it. Now, whether or not I can do it my way, I can't guarantee that, so.
Right. Well, I think you're going to probably, if there are things that need to happen in order to get that done, then I would like to hear that so that we can get that done going forward. Because I think this as a board, from day one, we just want a good budget that we can rely upon. Because again, even going back to maybe we got enough money for the milk and the eggs, but you still got to be pretty accurate on that. Otherwise, you're going to have some potential problems even with that, even with those specific budgets, that we still want to be as accurate as possible and not having to make as many transfers as possible.
Absolutely, and I want that more than you because I'm managing the budget for you, and it's a lot easier to manage if it's budgeted correctly from the beginning, or at least as correct as you can. And I don't want to keep coming back to you with all these budget amendments because this is just I've never experienced this many. So this is definitely something that we have improving is the only way to go on this.
I'm going to make a motion, but I want to say something before I make the motion. I really think you can take care of this, but you've got to do it your way. And I hope that management will make sure that happens, that you be given whatever is necessary to get this on the right track and keep it that way. This is really bad. But I know it has to be done, and I know that legally we have to end the year in the black with everything accounted for in a proper way. So with that in mind, even though I regret that we have to do this, I move the approval of the listed budget amendments.
Any further discussion? Ms. Martin, do you have any questions?
Expressing my disappointment too, and I just hope that even with what was just passed with the LSU, having the tools that you need to do the appropriate job, but he is correct, and those of us that came in with this debate and that group of board members, we've been here 4 years, and we've definitely been given this same song. I mean, and just to hear Mr. Dudley's sentiments of this being a drastic change from what he's used to and being on the board those many years. So hopefully you're going to get the tools that you need to make some positive progression on this, because this particular piece, the finance piece for us is, at this point, it's beyond challenging. It is getting to the agreed word of disappointing. Thank you.
All right, seeing no other lights, we are ready to vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Ridley. Mr. Ridley.
Dr. Marzak, I know all this is not the fault of Ms. Gagliano. How much are your department heads and your administrators at the school level, how much are they actually checking their budgets and looking at them to make sure everything is correct?
Well, I could say department heads check them quite frequently. We talk about them basically every Monday in executive. Ms. Ventura brings up things, Mr. Breeden brings up things. We talk about them every single week. For school-based, I know that Dr. Woodard works closely with the principals to make sure that they're monitoring their budgets. When they came in and they did their February and March budget presentations, Dr. Woodard talked with them about where their current spending was, what the current money they had left over, and when they had to spend it by. So we talk about it quite frequently. And our goal in bringing in Ms. Gagliano as a well-experienced chief financial officer is to eliminate these types of things from happening. I'm really excited to see the budget that she builds on July 1, because she's going to have the ability to put things in the right place and the right buckets and where they need to be. So I'm excited to see the budget that she develops.
Well, I know in previous meetings you had talked about turning a portion of the each individual school's finances over to the administrators.
Yes, sir.
And if we're going to do that, you know, there was no reason for some of these items to pop their head up in May and June. You know, I don't think some of them are looking at the finances, and then if they're not going to look at them and monitor them, then we need to find somebody else that can look at them.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Seeing no other lights, we're ready to vote. All right, that motion does pass. Thank you, Ms. Gagliano, for giving us as accurate a picture of our finances as you possibly can. Policies, all the policies that we had to discuss were put into the consent, so we don't have anything in that section. Zoning and facilities, we've got bid 18-050 for discussion. We did talk about this at the board work session. We have a motion or motion approved by Mr. Moore. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Pennings. Did you get that, Ms. Shirley? All right. Do we have any discussion? All right, seeing no lights. Ms. Martin, do you have anything on the RFP for construction manager? I'm going to take that as a no. Mr. Dudley?
Excuse me for my ignorance, but which firm are we selecting?
There's a recommendation to select the proposal from Hewlett Spencer for bid 18050. Thank you. You're welcome.
Mr. Bates?
I just wanted to say that as a board member, I've been very satisfied with the services we've been getting for Hewlett Spencer, and so I will support the staff's recommendation.
Ms. Bowers?
I'm very pleased. I have no complaints about Hewlett Spencer, but someone did share with me some billing information. Bell, and I know you and Bell in my mind are hand in hand, but you know, I'm just questioning some of the frivolity that's going along with it about Topgolf. So I'm just curious. I guess I have some questions. I think a commissioner noticed a $500 expense to Topgolf.
Do you want to respond to that, Mr.?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Sure, please. Feel free to.
That was an expense that Bell paid for. That was something that they did. It's a team building type thing that includes people that don't just work for Bell or us, but are part of what it takes to make everybody work together. And team building is that had to do with Murray County. So I didn't take part in it, but I would have liked to have, and they're good things. We do different types of things. So the mistake was that they just printed a bill and it looked like that possibly Murray County government had paid for that, but that did not happen, and it has never happened. We don't let that sort of thing happen.
It's interesting. Okay. Well, I hear you, and I know we all value transparency, but I mean, it's pretty much in print on 2 different pieces of paper that were shared with me, so I just think it's a valid question, but
No, it
I
was
am
fine for
curious
you to
who,
ask.
well, I'm just curious who all went, since we do value transparency.
Who all
here.
went?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, but, you know, Jamie's not here tonight. Jamie went. I don't know who else all went. I didn't ask.
Maybe someone from Murray County Schools.
I don't know if anybody else, if anybody knows,
Yep.
but I wasn't there, so, and I didn't ask. I was busy and I had other things on my mind.
Oh, I know. I understand.
And I just want you to know, Abby, as y'all know, everybody knows who Abby is. She made sure that, you know, we have 3 or 4 checks on the bills. That wasn't something somebody found and we took it off the bill. They just happened to be on a credit card bill that Bell paid themselves. It was never billed to Murray County government. But I don't know who went. If anybody,
Jamie Spencer was there. I popped over because I was at Trevecca that day. Dave and Stan were there. I don't know who the people were from Bell Construction, Civil Site.
There was some people from the architect, I think. I can't
Yeah.
remember everybody who was there.
Jamie,
Several people on the team.
was Jamie there?
Yes, sir, he was.
Was Ronnie there?
No, Ron was not.
Ronnie,
Yeah.
I think Ronnie and I were doing something
I think it's
together.
just Jack.
Yeah.
Did Dr. Woodard attend?
And let me say, that's one question that's come up from John Sparks, actually, question on the bill. When Bell turns in their credit card bill, the whole credit card bill is copied and put with, but there's only, they have a code and only certain expenses are charged to us. There's other things that go to other different companies. And so I think their credit card bills show multiple expenses, some that are included on the pay application that the bill's attached to and some that aren't. So I think that's what Mr. Hewlett was talking about. This was not one that was on the pay application charge.
Okay, I'd really like to have a complete list of who went from Murray County Schools when time allows.
Yeah,
Because
well,
I
the
am,
people from Murray County Schools, myself, Dave, and Dr. Marzak did come and go, but that's the only people from.
That's all.
Yes, ma'am. Because we're the only ones been involved in the design project, so that's why we went.
I guess I was gonna say that I'm not familiar with, the questions that are raised, but for my particular vote, it has no bearing whatsoever, no influence whatsoever. I'm basing my vote on the quality of work that I've seen thus far, and that's what I'm relying upon today.
I just want to say, I too have no objections to, I said, I just want to say too, I have no objections with the work that Hewlett Spencer's done. I know there's some considerable savings that we will be seeing very soon. And considering where they stepped in on this project, it gives me even greater hope that maybe we'll get some of those pennies back when we finish those other two schools with Hewlett Spencer being involved. But I do think that the issue that Ms. Powers raised is something that a commissioner raised, and so it's not something that's been brought out by our staff. And I don't like to find things out. You know, we had that conversation a long time ago that it's not good when we find out something at the grocery store because our staff doesn't give us that information. I have no objections to anybody going to Topgolf, but I would say if everybody's got a company vehicle, everybody's driving up there, we are paying for it. And we're talking about being severely underfunded on some of our budget. So we have to look at those type of things. I don't think it has any bearing on Mr. Hewlett or Mr. Spencer, but I do think that it goes to judgment of our management at times. And I do hope that we'll remember those things and make sure that we are always putting the kids first and not team building at Topgolf.
Well, you understand, I want to make sure you.
I do understand.
Y'all
I do
understand
understand, Mr. Hewlett, and it is nothing. It is no reflection on you.
Yeah, that we knew that was on the bill, and it wasn't
Correct.
billed to Murray County government.
Well, let me put it to you this way, Mr. Hewlett. The people that you invite for the team building to go up there to go to Topgolf are probably Murray County taxpayers, right? But how do you pick those three? And you picked them based on
Well, I
their
didn't.
relationship. I know you didn't.
And it
But
wasn't
how do
my
you pick
idea.
them? You pick them based on the relationship that they have within our school system and based on the relationship that you have with, or whoever, Bell or whoever has. And so I think we're just being charged to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. And that's all I think that question was directed at, either by the commission or either by us as board members. So, but we appreciate the work that you do.
And let me mention, Mr. Hewlett, again, because I was one of the people participating. This is one of probably 15 meetings we've met with the design team. All of the rest of those have been either at ESA's offices in Nashville or Bell's offices in Brentwood. We do make that trip.
Or here.
Or here. We've had some here. That's exactly right. We've met some in our office building, some in our office building. We make that trip quite often. It was in one of those meetings that a suggestion was made, be a good team building opportunity for this group to have this meeting. I invited Dr. Marzak to step. He's been in some of those meetings. I invited him to stop by. He did exactly what he said. He stopped by. He was in Nashville for a graduation at Trevecca. He stopped by. if that was an error in judgment, I apologize, and I'll be happy to pay for whatever expenses Dave Hall and it costs for us to go, if you think that was a mistake on our part. I don't know how much that was, but we'll be glad to pay for that. Because again, we thought we were just doing something as a part of this group that we've met with for probably 15 or 20 times in this design process. But we'll do that if you think that would make the commission happy. We'll be glad to do that.
I do want to reiterate how I started, was that I have no complaints with your services.
Sure.
I repeatedly say, I don't think we're transparent. I don't think that we are very transparent. And I think, that's not directed at you, but the central office is not seen as transparent. And, you know, when commissioners ask me about it, I think there is a lot of people are suspect, and it's things like this. And until we speak about them in an open meeting, it just continues to move along. And I want us that in our strategic plan, transparency ranked very high. I want us to be more transparent, and we aren't. There are many half-truths and manipulation of what is presented, and that is important to me that we change that. So when a commissioner asks me, I think now we have an answer. So thank you.
And let me add, Ms. Powers, because one of the things this board voted early on, and this was before some of you were even on the board in the central design process, and we've continued this process. Maybe you want to change. You voted that they would serve as our owner's representative, and that they were given specific direction by the board chairman, then Jim Borson. Didn't want all those things coming right back to the board. So we have not presented to you with the detailed bills each month. We present to you the summary. That's reviewed by their third-party consultant that does that, third-party firm that okays all of the bills before we ever sign off on them. We can bring you all that. If you want, we get all of the detail in our office. There's hundreds of pages every month. The county has asked for that. The finance office asked for that. Didn't ask us. They've asked Hewlett Spencer directly. We were not involved in that transaction whatsoever. But we will be glad to bring that same level of detail to you if you ask for it. We were told specifically at the beginning of the central project not to do that. But if the board wants to redirect, we'll give you whatever you want.
Because we're already giving it to the county.
Yeah, and they're giving the county, and we're getting it in our office. But we bring you the summary that shows the detail, the costs, and how they've summarized those and signed off on them. We can give you, because again, our goal is not to not be transparent. Our goal is to be as clear with you about everything we're doing.
And might I add that Doug Laconin is who originally called us and asked about it. He didn't understand the coding that Stan explained, and when Abby called him and explained it to him, he was fine with it.
He did not call us. We've not been
No,
involved in this transaction.
he called Abby, actually.
Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I don't really see a problem with the team building approach. When we had Spring Hill Middle School under construction, there were no meetings between the contractor building the school and the architectural firm. There were no meetings, or very few meetings, where our staff was even invited to participate in any meetings. And so there was very little communication between all parties. And that's what led to some of the problems and led to some of the lawsuits. You know, I think team building among all parties is fine. It takes a little pressure off. You're not talking just strictly business. And so I see nothing wrong with it. You know, maybe it did create some confusion with the accounting side, but I don't see anything wrong with it. Mr. Hewlett has explained that Bell paid for it out of their funds, and so you know, groups. I know when they were building Central, we were all invited to a hamburger cookout. You know, I look at that as being along the same lines. You know, it is just team building and morale building for the workers. Thank you.
Mr. Dudley, let me just say, there's another one in July that they're having for the new schools we were going to invite you to as well. But none of us will go if y'all don't think we should.
And nobody's told me about that one yet. Jamie,
think it's the 17th
Jamie,
of
Jamie
July.
doesn't even invite me to all these things.
It's being sponsored by Lee, who's the HVAC guy.
All right. Seeing no other lights, I think we're ready to vote. Joanna, are you there? Okay. We'll just go ahead and say that one passed, and she wasn't able to take that vote if that is acceptable. Mr. Williver, are you okay with that? All right. It will not make a difference. Under other services, I think the next one is bid number 18-041. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Hewlett. We're almost done. We're almost done. PD, Dr. Woodard, on yours. Does anyone have a motion? These are all dates that are not going to require us to pay for subs, correct? Accept the grant.
Yes, the first training will be on August the 2nd. We're going to try to use the PD dates so that we're not using dates that will conflict. So that's correct. And I asked Ms. Kelly Myers to say a couple words about the Crayola training as well. We had an introductory session back in April, and teachers are really excited about it, but I'll let her talk about it.
Thank you. I didn't know I was going to do this, but that's okay. Yes, the teachers came back very excited. We have a team of 10 that will end up being trained during these professional development days. So they were real excited. Now they are really excited now that they have just finished the Tennessee Arts Commission, what would you call that, a conference?
Summit, yes.
Yeah, the summit. And so they've already talked to me about that and the design thinking and how all the integration of the arts with all content areas. So they're coming back and they can't wait to share it with the other teachers that we have on staff. So we are very excited about it.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Kinzer, a second by Mr. Moore. I don't see any lights. Anyone have anything for discussion? We're ready to vote.
Please vote.
Yes. Yes, we got your vote on that one. Got yours a yes. All right, that motion did pass. And I think that's the end for us, unless anyone has anything else. We're ready to adjourn?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Dudley.
is it affirmed that we're going to have a special call meeting Wednesday to discuss the
Yeah, we have two things, just the 71-100, 116 line for BEP, and then my evaluation.
Okay.
Yeah, Miss Martin was able to complete hers today at 2:30, so I now have all the data, and I can format the data for the meeting on Wednesday for approval.
Okay, so we're going to have a budget meeting and a special call meeting, correct?
I talked with Mr. Williver, and he said that he did not think we would be in breach if we did not publish it for a June meeting. As far as the evaluation information, that's not a reason for us to have a specially called meeting. As far as the budget amendment, I'm not sure where we are on that.
Okay, well, I thought our evaluation had to be done in June. So, what are we doing about not meeting that legal deadline?
I agree, the evaluation has to be done in June. I don't know that, from what I understand, it was on the regular meeting, but it got pulled off because not all members had responded. I don't have a good answer other than to say that it sounds like the evaluation was done in June, but maybe just not reported out. So, you know, whether or not you set it specially or you roll it over to July for at least the results, I don't think that'll necessarily put you in breach of contract.
Okay, thank you.
The latest email I received from Marian Dursky today was that the numbers would be available on Wednesday. So that really puts us up against the wire because your meeting, well, I guess it's as long as the county would accept it from the night before, because theirs is Thursday, right? So that's the only choice we have, really, at this point.
Madam Chairman, how can we have a budget meeting and when you just told us you're not confident with the figures until you close out June?
Okay, we're talking about I think maybe two different things.
We are. I'm just,
okay.
You know, but we're talking about a meeting, a call board meeting for the budget amendment, right?
For the BEP
That
funding.
needs to be done before Thursday.
For the teacher line item that was under budgeted.
Right. But we've also got a budget meeting scheduled that night, which I understand, and we scheduled it 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
But from what you've said, we won't even be looking at figures that are really correct. So I'm not sure we need to meet on the budget this week until you can get a handle on the end of the year revenues.
It's more the expenditure side for FY19.
Well, both. I mean, you said you'd be more comfortable seeing where we were after.
Yes, for the revenue, but also on the revenue side, it's sort of tricky because we're 2 months behind in receiving the revenues from when they're actually collected. So
you think that we can meet, discuss, but we won't be able to take any action until we can get some final figures? I mean, we
I
can't.
think we know as much as we're gonna know on the revenue side right now.
Okay.
And then again, it's based on what the county decides to do. On the expenditure side, if I get the reports, I can double check where we're at, what we have so far. I can't predict if I get the reports.
Understood.
When did you ask for the reports?
I don't think we should do this here.
Okay. I'm happy for us to meet on Wednesday if we want to, but I don't think we're going to get anywhere. I don't think that we have the information that we need, and that's maybe by design. Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have already presented the county with a budget, and they turned it down and sent it back. So I think we've got a little time because, and I would rather wait until we have accurate figures. I mean, we've done said that part of the reason we had all these budget amendments tonight is because we didn't have accurate figures. And then so I would rather, if it drags into July and August, so be it. You know, the county can get upset all they want. It's not my fault that they went ahead and set the tax rate. That shows how little concern they had for us to not even let us get our budget finalized before they set a tax rate. So I'd rather us be accurate. We're gonna have some tough decisions probably of having to cut numerous items. And I want those cuts to be based on accurate information, because some of them may involve employees. And I certainly don't want to have to let employees go based on inaccurate information. And then so if we can have correct information Wednesday, I'd rather not have a meeting.
What will it do to our line? I mean, because if we have a specially called meeting, that incurs additional costs for, I mean, are we where we can have 2 meetings and pay everybody $120?
Let me take a look.
Monitoring
Let me
it.
pull up Allaview.
Madam Chair, while he's looking for that. And so if we don't pass a budget by June 30th, technically we are in the 18-19 fiscal year, starting July 1. So what happens then? We're just under a continuing budget according to the same budget we had
It's a
set for the.
continuing budget, and then, once it's approved, then, you know, you decide what you want to, if there's any salary changes or whatever, you decide if it's at a certain date going forward or retroactive or.
And the county budget chair said that they weren't going to be taking ours up until July 19th. So we do have some time.
According to Allaview, we're looking okay in that line right now. We should be okay. 33,000 left. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
My suggestion is to simply have the special call if it has to be, and postpone the budget meeting at least a week or whatever's necessary till we have better figures.
And really, the key question on the budget is, we've gotten our increase from the revenue from the county commission, which is what I posted to the agenda for next week, which is $2,850 and $2,850,166. Did talk to, Ms. Gagliano talked to Doug Laconin. Doug Laconin is comfortable raising the revenue an additional $710,832 based on current projections on where we are. He's also talked to Scott Sumners and said he's comfortable recommending raising that. So that means that's $2,850,000 plus $710,832, which puts us about maybe about $3.4 million. And so what we worked on today and what we were planning on working on tomorrow was what areas in the budget have to be funded, what areas can we roll back, what areas can we not fund. So there are some things that we need from you guys, for example, questions on raises, questions on stipends, because some of you guys over the last 2 weeks gave me feedback. Some people said, you know what, Marzac, make a recommendation, and I'm comfortable with that. Not a problem, because you guys looked at it, you know the detail, and we're comfortable going with your recommendation and staff's recommendation. So what we need from you guys really Wednesday is, with our recommendations, what are you comfortable with, what are you not comfortable with, what do you want to move around in order to have us ready to present back to the county commission by July 19th. Do you want to go to the budget committee with just that $3.5 million? Or does the board want to say, no, we need $4 million, but we're going to need that information sooner rather than later? If not, we're going to be meeting, 2 or 3 days in the month of July in order to be ready for July 19th. So for us, as staff and what we've talked about today, Wednesday is really critical as we bring our recommendations and as a board see how comfortable you are with those recommendations as you move things out and put things in. So Wednesday for us is critical. Personally, superintendent, I'd prefer to keep Wednesday because we've worked on it for about 2.5 to 3 weeks now to be ready for Wednesday.
I will be looking forward to your recommendation.
Thank you.
But which I agree needs to come from staff.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think it should be the way that we receive that as if this is what Betty Kinzer wants, this is what so-and-so and so-and-so. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait a minute.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, we decide this as a board, and those discussions need to be as a board, not,
Exactly.
oh, there's only so many want this, so many want that, so many want that. We all want all of it, but I'm really, yes, let's meet Wednesday, I agree, but I want to hear your recommendations. I want to be able to justify whatever those are, and then you hear from us what we feel like, and then we can hopefully move forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bates.
And I would like to get some guidance from staff. I think there's some things that we have to realize with the current budget that we're operating under. And that's what they're kind of setting as the base amount, and everything above that is, in their mind, an increase. The very first thing we need to recognize is the budget that we passed for this fiscal year was under budgeted from day one. There was a lot that we did not include in our budget that we knew going in that we were going to have to spend. And we're paying for it right now. We've been paying for it out of fund balance all year long. So we really have to, in some ways, figure out what our real starting point was to begin with. And that starting point we started with this fiscal year under our budget was incorrect to begin with. So we've got to recognize that. The other thing that I think staff needs to take a look at, and we've got to recognize, is the commission has not been, we've been making things easy for the commission for the past about 3 years now. They have not been really feeling what the true needs of the school system has been, because what has been happening historically is each year we've been taking money out of fund balance in order to pay for maintenance items, in order to pay for computers. All the diploma computers, I think, came out of fund balance. All the RTI teachers came out of fund balance. So that's something that's not showing up on their paper to begin with, because we helped them with that. I mean, I think we as a board, we were fiscally conservative, physically responsible, and we were saying, look, we want to try to help the commission out. We want to try to help the county out. Here's money that's going into our fund balance. We'll shoulder those items. We'll shoulder a lot of these maintenance items. We'll shoulder the RTI positions. We'll shoulder all those things. And we're not getting credit for that, guys. So for the county to really understand what the base, what the starting point is, first they have to recognize that the budget that was passed last year was already under budget from day one. And they also have to realize that a lot of these things that we've been helping them out with, like RTI and those sorts of things, they took away that funding. Okay, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that, okay, yes, we need to have RTI teachers, and so we as a board say, yeah, we want to try to do that. We'll do that out of fund balance, okay? But then you take away the money that was going into fund balance. That's gone. And so they have to recognize that look, we were already paying for these RTI teachers. It wasn't showing up on your budget, but we were paying for it. But because we were getting this extra funding, we were able to use for RTI and those sorts of things. But you all took that $2 million away from us. We do not have that in fund balance anymore to be able to spend. So they have to recognize that. And that's something as we as a board, we need to really, study those things and really have a good understanding of what the true starting point is. A lot of these things, they seem like they're increases, but they really aren't. It was really that we were shouldering a lot of those things to keep them from having to see those increases. And now that they've taken that funding source away, it's only fair that they now shoulder those things, because we were shouldering them up to that point. They took it away, so now it's time for them to step up to the plate and start to shoulder those things that we were funding all along, that we were taking on all along.
Mr. Pennings.
I totally agree with Mr. Bates. Plus, they keep saying they only want to fund what they funded last year. How much is the insurance going up? 1.3 or something like that? Workman's comp is going up. They want to give the county employees a 2.5%, I think, % raise or something like that. But we shouldn't give our teachers or any of our people a raise, because that'll raise what they have to give us. But normal step increases on the teachers' wages, workman's comp goes up, health insurance goes up, property insurance goes up. You can't keep operating your house at a 1990 level when it's 2017 or 18 or 19 or 22. You have to move along, and things increase, and the commission's going to have to realize that when things increase, we have to pass along the increase, just like a grocery store passes along the increase to us. It's the nature of things, and yes, we got the easy job because we just have to tell them what we need. They have to find it, but they haven't found it or haven't funded it fully for years. And I've been here 10 years almost, and Tommy's been here almost 12, and he'll probably tell you the same thing I am.
Let's just remember that right now we're planning on coming back on Wednesday. So if it's something, Mr. Bates, I'm going to turn it over to you, but let's just try to wrap this up, because we're going to have plenty of time to discuss it on Wednesday, it looks like. Mr. Bates.
I appreciate that. I mean, I don't want to belabor these things, but it's just some things that I hope staff is understanding, that there's a lot of things that in this current budget that we're in, this is not the real starting point. Just like what Mr. Pennings, the point he was making, that things go up. Things actually went up this year for the 17-18 fiscal year. And I don't know how it happened, we understood that things were going to go up, that we were going to have to budget more, but we didn't budget that. The county said this was a good deal, but it was not a good deal. It was already a net loss from day one. And that's why we've been having to hit fund balance so much, because it was never a proper budget to begin with. And so we've got to correct that. We've got to, as staff, it's not a blame game. It's about trying to understand these things, because staff is going to really have to explain these things to the commission. If they don't, we may understand it, but if they don't explain this to the commission, what happened last year, and help them to understand that, yes, it looks like it's a big increase, but really, guys, that increase was there, about half of that to begin with. You just didn't budget for it last year, and we had to take it out of fund balance because of that. So that's my only point, is I hope that staff really studies this and really understands it, because if they don't, we're kind of starting off on the wrong foot on this.
Oh, no, sorry.
Do you have a date for a shed on the half-day retreat?
No, ma'am. Miss McFarland and I are playing. I'm sorry. I contacted Miss McFarland. We're playing phone tag, back and forth voicemail. So
Okay.
left her another voicemail today saying love to talk to her. So
Okay.
just waiting to hear back from her.
All right. We have all of our FYI items. Do we have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Ms. Kinzer, seconded by Mr. Moore. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right.